Okay, hi everyone. So today we are doing a special session on the Poland-Belarus conflict, and I'm super excited to take this session. In fact, this is my first GK YouTube session, and I was particularly interested in doing this because Poland is very close to Baltic Sea, and I've done a lot of swimming there. So I was, I was speaking to Nikhil and Saurabh the other day, and I was like, this is close to Baltic Sea, so I need to take this session. So yeah, so that's why we are here. And what's happening? I mean, it's December, and it gets really cold. That's part of the world, and so many migrants, uh, mainly from Iraq, Syria, these people have entered Belarus and come to the border, the dynamics which I'm going to explain in a little while, and they want to enter the European Union, primarily Germany, right? And uh, the Polish uh, government has being the protector of the European Union, is stopping them from getting inside or crossing the border. And what is the intent behind this? We'll all understand why people are being used as weapons. But before I discuss this topic in entirety, we need to know some history to understand what the dynamics are. And, once we understand the history, then, why this migration crisis has happened will be crystal clear to us. So the idea is to, take you across some basics and, so that you understand the topic in depth, right? As far as your CLAT exam is concerned, I'll be taking you, CLAT and AILET, I'll be taking you across a few important things which I believe is important. One is about Belarus, about Poland, about the European Union, and a brief about what this problem is and what is the genesis of this problem. All right, let's do it. Now, so this is the Polish border, and you see tear gas, etc., being used, and their tears. I mean, people have traveled the distance, and young people, young children, pregnant mothers, uh, pregnant women, and all. So they are all going through a awful situation at the Belarus. Poland border and even the Lithuanian border. All right, so let's understand a bit about Belarus. So I'll give you a brief about Belarus in a while. So if you see Belarus, it has it's one of the so when Russia disintegrated in 1992, Belarus became independent. So it's called the Republic of Belarus, and the capital is Minsk, which is a beautiful city. And it's actually a city of a lot of lakes. In fact, Belarus as a country has many lakes. So it has Russia to its north, Ukraine to its south. It has Poland to its west, and the north and northeast is Latvia and Lithuania. Estonia doesn't share a border with it. So I'm sure you know the capitals of these places. Lithuania is Vilnius, and you see Russia also has a small portion here. When the disintegration happened of Russia, then they wanted to keep some part of the Baltic Sea, right? And that's the reason you have one part of Russia which is disconnected from the mainland, right? So it gives you access to the Baltic Sea here, right? Poland also has Baltic Sea. That's Sweden out there, and so, the capital of Poland is Warsaw. Slovakia, the capital is Bratislava. Hungary is Budapest. And Romania is Bucharest. Ukraine has the border, which is Kiev, right? And if you look at it, with Poland, they have about 400 kilometers of boundary, right? And similarly with Lithuania, they have more than 600 kilometers of boundary, and even with Latvia. So they are trying to get access, to to the European Union, because Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they are all part of the European Union. Now, this is part of your Central Eastern Europe, right? And so Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all these are parts of European Union, right? Um, so the idea is that through this border, which is more than 1300, 1400 kilometers, Belarus is able to force the migrants into the European Union. Um and the aspiration of these this the migrants is to ultimately reach Germany. You must have heard of the collapsing of the boat when it was crossing the English Channel, right? So they are the same migrants who are traveling and who are trying to find uh, space in any of the European Union countries. So they were traveling actually from France, right, which is a part of European Union, to Britain, which exited from the European Union last year, 31st January. Right, so this is in brief about Belarus. It's a landlocked country, and right, so this is uh, so it was, like I said, it is formerly part of European Union. It is part of Soviet Union. The population is about 94 lakhs. The currency is Belarusian ruble. I've already told you about the neighboring countries. It has got 11 lakh lakes, meaning that's like uh, a lot of number here. 40% people are employed by state-controlled companies. So because of communism being practiced, that's the reason you have many state-controlled companies here. It's very popular for the gaming apps, right? And their main trading partner is Russia, and more so across the last 2 to 3 years after the sanctions have been put on on Belarus. Russia has helped them, to come out of the crisis, right? And they're very low on the in terms of the classification by the Freedom House, right? Which doesn't which basically classifies it as a non-free country. And I'll tell you more about it, why it is not a free country, right? And finally, yes, the crime rate in this country is quite low. So that's the positive side of Belarus. I mean, the crime rate is almost missing there. Now, we must know about this person. So he is the Gunda of Belarus, the president, sorry. And he has is serving the sixth term now as the president, though his presidency is not accepted by many countries because of the fake elections that happened last year, 2020 August, right? And so he is Alexander Lukashenko, right? And quite a popular guy. I mean, in terms of his antics, and he is now serving the sixth term. So last year the elections were held in Belarus on the 9th of August, and uh, uh, 9th of August 2020, and the the elections were actually fraud elections, because the lady who supposedly won the election, she was forced to go into exile, and so I'll talk about her later. But the elections were fraud, and the countries like USA, UK, the European Union, Australia, they did not accept her as the accept him as the president, right? And they don't do it now. So there were some sanctions passed against Belarus. And when you pass sanctions, these sanctions are essentially, in terms of taxes or not buying their stuff. So it impacts the economy in some way. So whenever the sanctions are put, the economy takes a back seat. So European in Europe, right? Belarus is one of the poorest countries, right? Because the economy is actually in doldrums, right? Yes, he's actually called the last dictator of Europe. All right. Now let's do a bit about. So before I come to this, I want to just discuss more about the Belarus issue. So why the sanctions were passed was, one is there were manipulations in elections, and like what has happened in Afghanistan, the Taliban took over, and it was not legit, and still they are not accepted as the legit government. Maybe time is going to uh, change it, but as of now they're not considered legit, right? And so is the case in Belarus. There's a government in exile, right? And the lady operates from Lithuania, right? There are a lot of human rights violations. I mean, any the opposition party, if there is any protest against the existing, you know, autocracy rather, they are put into jail, or they are they're sent out of the country. So we need to know about the opposition. Two things that have happened over the last, 1 year, in fact. So Ryan Air hijack. Now this happened in May, right? And recently during the Olympics, so this lady Christiana, she's 100 and 200 meters sprinter, and and something happened in Japan, right, where because of which she took asylum in Poland, right? So I if you see the elections, right, this lady Swatilana, she claimed about 60 to 70% of vote, but because the election commission was completely in the hand of the autocratic ruler Lukashenko, he credited himself with 80% of the vote, right, which was definitely manipulated and fraud, and that is the reason many countries do not accept. The countries that accept him as a president, I've not mentioned here. That's China, Syria, Russia. So these are countries that accept him uh, as the a president of Belarus. Um, so about this lady, now I've already mentioned here that she's a human rights activist, and she was a main she declared herself as a main opposition candidate after her husband, who was a YouTuber, he was put behind the bars, and she got support from the opposition parties in Belarus, and supposedly won the elections, and the process of takeover was to start, but the entire machinery was in the hands of Lukashenko, because of which she was not able to become the president, and she had to actually negotiate with the rulers, with Lukashenko and his people, to get out of the country. So she is presently in exile in Lithuania, and she was also nominated for 2021 Nobel Peace Prize by the president of Lithuania. Right? Now, just a bit about the Ryan Air hijack. What happened was this flight from Greece to Vilnius, which is the capital of Lithuania. And while it was in the Belarus airspace, right? While it was in the Belarus airspace, somewhere here, uh, and it was about to reach Vilnius, the MiGs were sent by Lukashenko, and the flight was intercepted, and it was forced to land, in Minsk, which is the capital of Belarus. And this is against uh, the the air, the Chicago Convention, and it is, you can't intercept a flight when it is into the airspace, right? And they give different reasons for it, in terms of safety. But the idea was that Roman Prostavich, who was also a YouTuber, and he was a pro democracy movement guy, he and his girlfriend, they were arrested, and he's been put behind the bars. So that's the reason, he had sent his mix. So again, the European Union said that, boss, what you're doing is not right, and the sanctions were more sanctions were passed against the Lukashenko regime in Belarus, right? So they're trying to strangulate the economy, and countries did a lot of things, like Ukraine stopped buying electricity from them, and right. So I'll come to that bit now. But this is why what happened, right? This was in May 2021, this year only, right? So this person was arrested. He was the founder of Nexta, and the flight was supposed to land in Minsk, right? And he had rallied the opposition to Alexander Lukashenko. And why was this wrong? Because it was against the Chicago Convention of Article 3 and 4, right? So let's understand about Roman Prosavich. I've already told you about him. He had galvanized the support against uh, the rigged elections that happened in August 2020, and he was the founder of this channel called Nexta. Right now, used to live in exile in Poland. Now he is in the jail in Belarus. So, uh, yeah. So, yeah, the other person that you need to know about is Christiana, and she was recently in news. She was part of the Belarus Olympic team, 100 meters and 200 meters, and she was forced to compete in 4 into 400 meters. Now, she is not a 400 meters runner, and she was forced by the Olympic Committee of Belarus to participate without her consent. And when she refused to do so, she was, being hushed to Belarus against her will again, and she refused to do that. And finally, Poland, they gave her a visa on the ground of, they gave her asylum there, right? So, so she was very much in news again, infuriated a lot of countries and the Olympic Committee. So, yeah, so this is what I wanted you to, know about. So these recent incidents have happened: Roman Prosavich and Christiana, and of course, what they did with the main opposition leader who actually won the elections, but the elections were completely rigged, Svetlana, right? Now, yeah, coming back to it, um, let's also understand about the uh, European Union. So you know about European Union. There are 27 countries in this, and I hope you are understanding, guys. I mean, what I've just said. So I'll just tell you in brief um what I've discussed till now. I'm giving you a basic background about why this crisis has happened, the migration crisis, people being used as weapon who have arrived in Belarus to enter into European Union. So Belarus has almost 1300, 1400 kilometers border with three countries: Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. And since June, right, spring, they have been entering, trying to enter. So a lot of people have already entered into European Union, and migration is a big, big issue. I mean, there is only so much that people can, the countries can absorb, and he's pushing people. How he pushed people, we're going to come to that. How he lured the people to come to Belarus, we're going to discuss about that. But the problem is that Lukashenko, who is supposedly the last dictator of Europe, he, he, uh, who he is not recognized by many countries like the European Union, US, UK, and he is, there were fraud elections last year, August 2020, and the main opposition party leader, Svetlana, who actually won the election, but she was forced to go into exile in in Lithuania, and and yeah, and a lot of other incidents happened. Like I discussed about the Ryan Air hijack, and the Olympic runner from Belarus who has taken asylum in in Poland, right? So this is broadly what we have discussed till now. All right, now let's discuss a bit about European Union. Well, I mean, this topic is again important because it is not just about Belarus versus Poland here. It is actually Belarus versus 27 countries in the European Union, because EU is one, right? And EU was established in 1993. This was the treaty that came into force, and it has got 27 members. So after Brexit, it's 27. Earlier it was 28. So 31st January last year, Brexit happened and Britain exited. Otherwise, there would have been 28 members. So Croatia was the last member that entered into the European Union. So that I mentioned here, 2013, right? So this could be an AILET question, single liner, one liner. And the last exit was Britain. So what is the advantage? The advantage is that there is a free So there's free movement of people, goods, services, and capital within the internal market. So there is a free movement of goods, right? So when there is a free movement of goods, the economy comes together, and it gives a lot of, it gives a huge amount of leverage, right? The currency is euro, right? But some countries have their own local currencies also, right? So like I've already mentioned, the Poland, I'm going to talk about the currencies. Poland has zloty, Germans. So every country, some countries have their own currencies, but the common currency across the European Union is euro. All right. European Commission is basically the executive branch of the European Union, and I'm sure you must have heard about her name, Ursula von der Leyen, right? And she is answerable to the European Parliament, which has got its the European Commission, right, is in Brussels, which is in Belgium, the capital of Belgium, the Kingdom of Belgium rather, and she's answerable to the European Parliament, which is in Strasbourg, France, and the administrative office of the European Parliament is in Luxembourg City, right? All right, and you should also know about the European Court of Justice, which is also in Luxembourg City, right? The capital of Luxembourg is actually Luxembourg City. All right, next. So I've given you a basic idea about the European Union, and here we have marked in terms of the color scheme. But yeah, so the green one is still not a member of EU, right? So you have Spain here, France, Germany, Poland, Austria. Switzerland is still not part of European Union, right? And I was recently here to participate in one of the Ironmans, and I mean, it has a different different currency, and I mean, they also had different criterias. When you have to enter the country, they allowed much before the European Union actually opened the boundaries. So here you have Romania, Bucharest, I've already mentioned, Slovakia, Bratislava. All these are part of the European Union, right? This is the Baltic Sea, and Russia has its entry from here for the Baltic Sea. And I'll just, talk about it. There are some popular pipelines, and that's also being used as one of the weapons. So there is a pipeline that is called Nord 2, which is from Russia to Germany, right? Yeah, I mean, if you look at the map, there are pretty important things here. So this is the Strait of Gibraltar. This is Morocco is somewhere here, and Spain is here. And this is actually a 9 kilometers distance between Morocco and Spain, and it is a very popular swimming route. I mean, besides the English Channel, which is about 33 kilometers of swim right between France and Dover in London, this is about a 9 kilometers swim here. So this is also one of the courses that people generally long distance swimmers do. Yeah, so that's about it, meaning about the European Union, right? Poland, capital Warsaw, is the 5th largest state in the European Union. The currency is zloty, and the prime minister, who belongs to the Law and Justice Party, quite a right-wing populist, and they have been ravaged by 2 world wars, and so both these wars, the second war, a lot of Jews died, and almost 15% of the Polish population got finished, and and the First World War, about 4 lakh got finished. So earlier it was called the Commonwealth of Lithuania and Poland, right? So they were together, right? It is part of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the European Union, and it shares a 418 kilometers. So the figures vary. Some people say it's 380 kilometers, so it varies from 380 to 425 kilometers. So approximately it's 400 plus boundary that it shares with Belarus, right? So I mentioned about Poland now. So Poland, on its to its north, we have Russia. It shares its boundary with Lithuania. It has its boundary with Belarus. Then you have Slovakia, right? Then you have the Czech Republic. The capital is Prague here. Germany is here, and you have Baltic Sea, right? So this is how it is. Yeah. So this is where I had my Ironman, which was August 2018, somewhere here. So this is Kalmar is the place here. Yeah. So now why the sanctions have been passed? I've already mentioned about this. So let's just move on. Basically, a lot of human right violations, repression of civil society, and of course the last two incidents which I've already mentioned. Let's move on. Yes. Now let's discuss the problem in brief. What has actually happened? So you see, thousands of people have, have already crossed, and some people are crossing the border and are at the border. And there is a humanitarian disaster in the making, because it's going to be freezing temperature of -8, -10, and children, pregnant women, mothers, all these people, are stuck, and they are being forced by the Belarusian soldiers. They've been given the wire cutters, etc., to break into the Polish side and thus enter the European Union. And it is going to be a catastrophe, because if so many people enter the EU, definitely there is going to be a crisis. Now, why is there going to be a crisis? I'm going to talk about it. And the European Union and the West, they basically say that there is one person who is responsible for it, and that is Alexander Lukashenko. Now, why have they said that Lukashenko is responsible for this? Because these people who have entered as migrants, they were typically from majorly, so I've mentioned that in the next slide, majorly they have entered from Iraq, about 3868 people, Afghanistan, Syria, Congo, and Yemen, and a few from Russia, right? So if you look at it, majorly Kurdistan, right? If you know about the map of Kurdistan, I mean, you'll see Kurdistan covers a lot of portion of Turkey. It covers the north of Iraq and Syria. So it has the north of Iraq. It covers from Syria, right? So these are the troubled countries. So you see here, so this is the north of Iraq and this is the north of Syria, right? Now what happened in 2015? In 2015, the Syrian crisis that happened because of the civil war that happened in Syria. So Assad, the ruler there, meaning the crisis that happened, finally the Syrians, they moved towards Turkey, right? And they were armed by the US, and there was a lot of conflict and all going on. They moved towards Turkey, and from Turkey they wanted to enter Greece and go into the European Union. Now what happened because of this was that it became a huge issue with Europe, and they ultimately gave about $6 billion to Turkey, right? So Turkey has got the largest migrant population in the world, and they gave this money to Turkey so that these migrants do not enter uh, European Union through Greece, right? Um, so uh, if if these people enter the countries, there is going to be a whole lot of issue, right? Now, what Lukashenko is maybe imagining is that if he is able to create a crisis, which is also called as the hybrid warfare, where humans are actually used as weapons, and it's going to create a crisis, with European Union. Ultimately, the objective is mostly to go to Germany, right? So these migrants are coming from economically deprived nations or nations where uh, there is uh, there is a civil war, like Syria had a civil war, and these are the reasons, uh, why they wanted to enter into Europe, because the economy is much better, the the lifestyle is better, so they wanted to enter into a country which is developed, right? So that's the idea. When Alexander Lukashenko, through the state sponsored uh, tourism agencies, they started giving ads in Middle East. So mostly you see from Middle East people are traveling. They started giving ads that it was a very visa free kind of a invite, that you can come to Belarus and achieve the European dream, right? And people got attracted. They spent thousands of money to reach Belarus. As soon as they reach Belarus, with the intent to reach uh, Europe, he immediately whisked them to the borders. So first it was Lithuania, and people started entering Lithuania. I mean, initially there was not much of border check, but they declared a state of emergency after 2-3 months, when hundreds of people had already entered Lithuania, right? And similarly, once Lithuania, they started checking on people, then their focus shifted on Poland, right? And they started entering the Polish border, and now um, they have put barbed wires, and they've not allowed any media to cover. And because the moment you enter into a European Union, uh, I mean, you have to respect the human being. I mean, and you have to give them proper asylum. So there may be reasons why they are not letting people let the media cover the entire episode. So there are tear gases and water cannons, etc., being used to push away these people. And Poland is getting many brownie points now. Why brownie points? Because uh, a few months ago we were talking about Polexit, where the the right wing party of Poland, they declared that that Polish law can overrule the European Union uh, laws, right? And that really infuriated the European Union, and they were, about to take actions against Poland, which could be sanctions or whatever. And suddenly this thing happened, and now Poland has, completely got sentiments to their side, because they're actually playing the role of safeguard guarding the European Union, right? If they stop the migrants entering into the countries, the most developed countries there, like Germany and all, I mean, uh, they would definitely get the brownie points. Okay, so somebody has asked me, why didn't they enter Ukraine? Well, Ukraine, is further that side. If you look at the boundary of Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine, you can either go to Russia from here, or uh, the Ukraine has, yeah, meaning that could be one of the options they have. They enter Ukraine, and through Ukraine they can go to Poland. So as of now, they have chosen Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland. I mean, Ukraine could be next, right? So yeah, so look at what happened now. They so Ukraine has also announced that they would deploy, thousands of border guards and security personnel to its border with Belarus, because there could also be a crisis there, right? And so I wanted to show you something. Yeah. So now what European Union is considering is even more sanctions, on Belarus, and they have also thought of uh, sanctions against. Some flights could be banned, right? Like the Aeroflot, and which is the Russian's national airline. So any flight that is trying to get the migrants to Belarus would be possibly banned, right? So you see, uh, this is a very very tricky situation now. You have migrants coming in. If they cross the border, you need to give them asylum, and uh, I mean, so it's a situation that they are facing right now, and so mostly people are coming from the Middle East. So you have flights from Istanbul, right? From Syria, from Beirut, from Baghdad, from Dubai, and they're all trying to reach Minsk. The flights are not they're going back almost empty. Mostly they're coming with full flights are there, and so the reason is that somebody is attracting them and ensuring that people come in masses, and they are the objectives are is fulfilled. So what are the chances of escalation? Well, Lukashenko is um, is a very smart guy. I mean, they after he became the president, the first thing that he did was that he has maintained very close ties with Russia, and it's called the Union of Russia and Belarus. So they act as one. So uh, people do conjecture that what Lukashenko is doing behind the back, the Russians might be involved, and Russians have been their biggest support system. I mean, they are in a way driving the Belarusian economy, and there is a free entry and exit between Belarus and Russia, right? And they're both communist governments there. So uh, about 15,000 troops are already at the border. The Russians have already sent these bombers which have flown close to the Polish border. And Alexander Lukashenko has threatened that this Yamla pipeline, now this pipeline actually is from Russia and it goes to Poland and Germany, right? And this particular pipeline, passes through Belarus, and he has threatened that he is going to disrupt it. And I've actually shown the pipeline here. So this is the Yamla Europe pipeline, and it passes through Belarus, and it goes to Austria, it goes through Poland and Germany, right? So this is where Germany is, right? So he has, in fact, threatened. I mean, it's not that Russians won't be affected because of this, but yeah, when Russians put their foot down on this, he did manage to stop the supply for unwanted kind of maintenance, and he the power was disrupted in Poland for 3 to 4 days, right? Okay. So this particular pipeline has got a length of 4,100 plus kilometers, and this is the kind of oil that it carries, about 33 billion cubic meters a year. And it's been commissioned in 2006. So this is one of the very important pipelines which passes. So one of the reasons, one of the possible outcomes could be that he could disrupt this pipeline, which could in a way affect the economy of the European Union, because it depends, on this particular natural gas. So it's a natural gas pipeline. Okay. And there is one more pipeline which is called Nord 2. The Nord 2 is from Russia, and so it is from this part of Russia, and which gives its opening into the Baltic Sea, and directly to Germany. So what happened is, when all this was happening, uh, the Chancellor of Germany, so what they've decided, the Germans decided that they are going to stop. They won't give the certification for this particular pipeline. So Russians gets affected, because you have the supplier and you have the buyer here, right? And this would really put the Russians off gear, right? So this is a very important pipeline which is going to be commissioned, and therefore the Russians definitely would not want to engage, with the Germans. I mean, if you know, Germany are already escalating their border problems with Ukraine. I mean, they have supported the mercenaries in eastern Ukraine, and in 2014 they annexed Crimea, and people are thinking that there could be a war, and there's a lot of buildup that is happening across the uh, Ukraine and the Russian border, right? Uh, so you see, there is a Russians would not like to engage with Ukraine as well as Germany at the same point of time. And you see, if this pipeline gets active, in a way, they are going to checkmate the Ukrainians, because the pipeline would not pass through Ukraine, and Ukraine would not be getting the transit revenue that it can get, right? So today war is not won, with military. It is won with good economics, good business sense, right? So I think it makes a lot of good business sense for the Russians to look at how they can do more business. And here comes the pipeline. If it is effective, they're going to generate a lot of revenue. All right. All right. So why migration happens? I've already mentioned. So these are the four reasons. Demographics. Now in demographics, I would mention something like a population density. Uh, you go to a developed country, the population density is much, much lesser. The economic inequality, the divide between rich and poor, the kind of support system, the social infrastructure that you have, right? The political violence. You see what's happening in Yemen now. Uh, so there are two factions of Shia groups, and they are fighting with each other, right? Similarly, in Syria, there is a problem. Iraq, there is a problem. Afghanistan, there is a problem. So uh, political violence really makes a big difference in terms of migration. And people, at the end of the day, they're human beings, and life is very, very important, and that leads to migration, right? And climate change, though it's not happened in this case, but you have many examples. Um, uh, like Maldives, in years to come, it is going to be completely submerged. Seychelles, which is going to be submerged, right? So Palma, so these are places which, in due course of time, they would be submerged. So climate change can also play a big role in migration, right? So the examples that I just gave you, Seychelles, Maldives, Palau, these are some of the countries which are not going to be existent uh, years from now, right? So people from these countries would also migrate. All right. uh, Now what is the solution to this problem of of migrants who are coming to the European Union through Belarus? Well, the problem could be that, you can ban the flights, but I don't think it's a very long term solution for this problem, because they're going to find a way. I mean, either through Dubai or through Russia or through Istanbul. I mean, you can't just ban all flights. They will always find a way to reach Minsk or Belarus, right? So that's not a long term solution. Second is, you build a wall. Well, it's going to cost a lot of money, like what Trump has did in USA with Mexico. It's almost 700 kilometers boundary that US has with Mexico. So the Trump wall in US, you all know about the Berlin Wall, right? Similarly, the Great Wall of China, right? So Berlin Wall was East Germany, West Germany, and the Great Wall of China. So that again is one of the options, but again a very, very time taking and not a foolproof solution, right? What could be a great solution is that now with immigration, with migration, we don't have any body. I mean, it's a country to country affair. I mean, you know, yes, they have to be treated as humans, and they have to be given that respect. But there has to be some international body which, which looks into it and which is a kind of final authority, right? So this is what I thought. World Migration Organization, which could be what WTO is to trade. You have um, you have some organization that can actually like you have the ICG, International Court of Justice, which is like the at the helm of affairs. You similarly have the WTO, right? Similarly, you should have the World Migration Organization, which can take effective decisions, and they're given some teeth, they're given some powers, so that they can be effective, right? So that's very, very important, and I think this could be a long term solution. Here we are playing a country, it's a country to country affair which could escalate into a global conflict. I mean, you see, Belarus is brothers with Russia. Russians are friends with Chinese, and so they form a bloc. I mean, and that becomes a very big military bloc. Similarly, you have the European Union supported with the US. So, so so we have to see that these conflicts don't uh, turn into a all-out war, right? So that's my take on this entire subject of the um Poland Belarus conflict, and what I can just say is that um, these conflicts will also happen in the future unless and until we have a very concrete long-term solution to this problem. Now, what I would want is I want a lot of participation from you guys now, and you can ask me questions on this subject, uh, and I would be very happy to answer. Nikhil is also there, and whatever questions you have from this particular topic, you could ask us. Okay? Anything that you have in mind? Yes, Poland is a member of NATO. Yeah, so this video is going to be available on the YouTube. You can always see it. Anything that you would like to ask about this problem? So, in brief, I would like to. Okay, Ayush, you've asked this question about International Organization of Migration. Yes, it exists, but it doesn't have any teeth, right? It doesn't have any powers. I mean, they're more of talkers than doers, and therefore, they are not very effective. So let's just, in brief, I'll tell you now what all we have discussed and um, what all we should know. Yes, they could become refugees and migrants. I have not classified them. They could be, uh, they could be classified as refugees or economic migrants. So as of now, they can become refugees, but as of now, they're just migrants. For their purpose is we don't know about that. Well, it can be a humanitarian crisis, Soumya, because if so many people are entering, let's say if lakhs, thousand of people, they enter the Europe or a country, it's going to be a crisis. Meaning, how would you look after these people? They are without jobs. You have to feed them, and at the end of the day, they are humans, so you have to look after them. So it is going to be a big responsibility. Okay, Snehal, you've asked me what is this second pipeline called? It is called Nord 2. It is from Russia to Germany. I've shown the map here. Yeah, so it is from Vyborg and Ust-Luga, which is in Russia, and it goes to Germany, the place called Greifswald. So it is a direct line. Okay. Yeah, Nord 2 pipeline. So, in brief, what we have discussed today, let us just, kind of summarize everything before we pack up for the day. First thing, the dictator of uh, dictator of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, right? And he has orchestrated everything from from the very basics. People traveling from all across. One, you should know about the European Union, right? Established in 1993. 27 member countries. The last entrant was Croatia. Brief about Poland, who the prime minister is, and the Law and Justice Party, right? Fourth, you should know about this particular crisis. And in crisis, you should know that mainly they are Kurds. And I've shown you the map of Kurdistan, right? So you just read a little bit about Kurdistan, which I showed through the map. Yeah, right. So this part. And right. And so these are the important things that you should know. And that's it. I mean, otherwise, I hope you've understood the topic, why this would, you know, why this problem has happened. So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the session. And if there's anything, you can just write and I'll be happy to answer. Well, someone has asked, okay, Pragya, you've asked, UN is not going to intervene in the crisis. Well, China and Russia, they have the veto power. I mean, so that's the problem. If they do, it's great. But do they have the veto power? Not as a group, because China and Russians, they are pro Belarus. By Now, Utkarsh, you've asked me, Poland conflict in Russia is diverting attention from Ukraine. Well, they are both different issues, actually. So, what has happened in Ukraine is that Ukraine, wants to be part of NATO, and they're working towards it. They're getting support from there, and if they do become a member of NATO, that's really going to piss off the Russians, and that is the reason they are putting their pressure so that the Ukrainians don't join the NATO. And Russians are very, like the Chinese, they have been very intrusive in their space. So, like Georgia, they've always trying to push their boundaries. So, be it even in Ukraine, you see they have been they annexed Crimea in 2014, and so in fact, I wanted to show you that map, and that gives them access to. They've annexed Crimea in 2014, and I wonder if I have that map here. Otherwise, I would have shown you. Yeah, so this part. This is Crimea, and this is what they annexed in year 2014. And this gives them the entire access to, this particular part. So from the Black Sea and via the Istanbul, they get into the Mediterranean Sea. So this is the Bosphorus Strait here, and they enter the Mediterranean Sea, right? Yeah. So Russia is basically pissed off just because of Ukraine joining the NATO, and second is even in Ukraine. I mean, if you see the Eastern Ukraine is heavily supported by the Russian mercenaries and the armies and the Russian army, and technically the control is with the Russians. So even in Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine is mostly in the hand of Russians. So Russians are actually very, very intrusive. I mean, like the Chinese, they think that the areas near to them, and especially the colonies, I mean, especially the disintegrated part belongs to them. Well, first, I mean, in demographics, everything would come: economic inequality, the population density, right? So, Vrinda, answering your question here. So, the economic inequality. Now, look at Yemen. I mean, they are dying in poverty. Definitely, they would like to go to a place where there are better economic opportunities, right? So that's part of demographics. Similarly, if there is a great population density, a huge population density, that would also create a lot of problems. So they would like to go to a place where there is a lesser population density. So all this becomes part of the demographics. All right, guys, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session, and it was lovely taking this, GK session on Poland, Belarus. Thanks, Nikhil, for being around, and thanks, Cabra. Um, yeah, so I hope to see you guys in my next session of GK. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.